Florida that, and we should give credit where credit is due, Mary Madeline, hours ago, when the networks had called this for Gore, pointed out that there was a huge absentee ballot vote total coming out of Florida. It now looks like we may have to go to the absentee ballots to find out who is going to win Florida and quite possibly who's going to win the White House.
Yeah, Jeff, you're right, because the question Bernie asked, going back to those previous elections, absentee voting wasn't the thing that it is today. Today, absentee voting is very important, especially in a state like Florida. And the bad news for the Gore people is when it comes to absentee voting, Republicans generally do better. That's been the pattern.
And how long does it take to count those kinds of ballots? We want to know when we're going to know. Okay.
Well, we know in Washington it could take a few days. Right. I think in Florida it probably will come a lot faster than that.
Well, we want to go to...
We're going to Larry King in Washington, who has someone from the Gore campaign, a very particular someone. Larry.
Thank you, Bernie. Our panel will resume in a little while. Ann Richards, Howard Baker, and Bob Woodward. But right now, we'll go to Nashville. Mark Fabiani, a very familiar face now on the American scene, the Gore Deputy Campaign Manager for Communications. We have 4 states left. Florida appears to be the key. What do you hear,
It
Mark?
is. You said it all, Larry. Florida is the key. It looks like the candidate who wins Florida will be the next president of the United States. It's going right down to the wire. It's white knuckle time here. You know, all the networks called Florida for Al Gore earlier in the evening, and we think it's going to end up with Al Gore. As you guys just mentioned on your broadcast, 2/3 of the outstanding votes in Florida are from the Democratic strongholds in that state. When those votes start rolling in, Al Gore is going to go ahead. And the prediction that CNN and everyone else made earlier in the evening, Florida for Al Gore, is going to come true, and Al Gore will be the next president.
How about the large amount of absentee ballots, which was also discussed and which they also say usually go Republican?
I think that's an oversimplification this year. In Florida, a lot of senior citizens vote absentee, and senior citizens in Florida are especially concerned with Governor Bush's plan to privatize Social Security. So we'll hold our own with the absentee ballots this year in Florida, and with the Democratic strongholds yet to be counted in the state, we're very hopeful that by the end of the night, Florida will be where it started the evening with all of your projections, right with Al Gore.
Are you angry at anyone over those early projections? How do you feel? How does the candidate feel?
Well, it's hard to be angry with people. You wonder what happened. You had every single network, people who have been projecting elections for years and years and years and doing a very good job of it, all unanimously predict Florida for Gore. And I think you guys did so for good reason. The exit polls all showed Gore well ahead by 3 or 4 points. And the fact is that Bush is slightly ahead there now, but only because the Democratic strongholds in the state, Dade County and Broward County, still haven't had their votes counted. And when those votes are counted, Gore will go back ahead, and the networks will be proven to be right belatedly, but right nonetheless, and Al Gore will win Florida.
You will still need, though, one of the other 3, will you not? Iowa, Oregon, or Wisconsin?
I believe that's correct.
One of the other 3. Wisconsin, they're reporting dead even. Oregon, a little too early. And Iowa, dead even. So even though if you win Florida, you still got to win one of the other 3.
That's correct. But we feel good about our chances in the other 3. Those 3 states, as you've pointed out before, are traditionally Democratic states, and one of them will certainly break in our direction, if not more than one. It all comes down to Florida, and we're waiting anxiously for the results, and we remain very hopeful.
As our anchors have pointed out, why do you think your candidate has not done as well in, say, Iowa and Wisconsin, 2 states traditionally Democratic?
Well,
why is that so close?
I think, as you pointed out, Ralph Nader has hurt in Wisconsin. He's taken some of the vote that would normally go to the vice president. And I'm not sure about Iowa. I'd have to look at those numbers, and I'm sure smarter people than I am will take a look at those numbers and figure that out. But the bottom line is those states, one of those 3 states that you mentioned, will break in our direction. And when we win Florida, that'll make Al Gore the next president.
Is there any chance you see this going into tomorrow or Thursday?
That's a very good question, Larry. It certainly could go into tomorrow, especially if there are a lot of absentee ballots in Florida. And I don't think you're going to be able to tell who's going to win this election until you can tell who wins Florida. So it's all in the hands of whoever it is in Florida that's counting all these votes.
Thanks very much, Mark. We'll stay close. Let's go now to Austin, Texas.
Good to see you.
Good seeing you. Representative of the Bush campaign. Ed Gillespie, what's the mood there? Have you heard what Mark had to say, Ed, that it's all up to Florida? Do you agree with that?
I heard part of it. Not entirely, Larry. We feel good about Florida, by the way. We're outperforming our vote goals in Duval County by about 44,000 votes, and Clay County just south of there by about 7,000 votes. So we are optimistic about Florida this evening. But there's still some things, as you know, earlier in the evening, Florida was being called for Vice President Gore. That's looking like that's going to actually end up being called for Governor Bush. We're optimistic. But for example, in New Mexico right now, they're 98% of the votes are in, and we are down by 1,000 votes. But there are about 96,000 absentee and early ballots that have yet to be counted and opened. But they're identified by party, and 44,000 of them are Republican absentee and early ballots, and 40,000 of them are Democrat. That's a 4,000 advantage. We're down 1,000.
Oh,
and so if the independents break the way they have during the course of the day, we will end up carrying New Mexico. It's blue on the map on the networks right now, but it's not likely to stay that way.
Are you saying, Ed, that you might lose Florida, chance, and still win? Well, if you say you win Florida, why even bring up New Mexico? If you win Florida, you win. Well,
because I think it's important. I mean, every electoral college vote counts, and the people in New Mexico ought to know that that they're very much likely to end up in the
But
Bush
then you
column.
are saying you've won this election because you're going to win Florida. So, I mean, New Mexico is interesting, but only interesting. You've won Florida.
I'm not saying we've won Florida at this point, Larry. I'm saying that we're outperforming our vote goals in a number of critical counties, and we're optimistic about it at this point in the night.
What do you make of this whole night, and how's the candidate holding up?
He's holding up great. He's obviously with his family and watching the tallies, and very much looking forward to having to come to a successful conclusion. We're optimistic.
We will have no mandate this evening, and we obviously have a split nation. What do you make of this?
Well, look, this is was always going to be a close contest. It's the office of the presidency was an open seat. It doesn't happen that often in American politics. We have two new two baby boom generation leaders as the heads of their parties, and the issues people are there were no economic crisis. We're at peace, and so the electorate was actually in a fairly content mindset, and so this race was always going to come down close. But I think that the governor's agenda that he laid out of saving Social Security, improving public education, modernizing Medicare, restoring our military readiness, and providing some tax relief to America's families, he'll have a mandate if we end up with 270 electoral college votes tonight.
But it can't be a mandate if one person has 50.2% of the vote and one has 49.8%.
Well, I think that we'll see how the Congress shapes up and how they view it.
Ed, anything tonight surprise you?
Well, there have been surprises throughout the night,
Did any state surprise you?
Did any state surprise us? No, we were and are still in play in a lot of states that have been traditionally Democratic. I see that Arkansas just came in recently, Tennessee, West Virginia. These have been traditionally Democratic-leaning states, and so we were hopeful about being able to carry those states, but we certainly weren't taking anything for granted there.
Thank you very much, Ed.
Thank you.
Ed Gillespie, spokesman for the Bush campaign, two very confident spokespersons, and both saying they're going to win Florida. And we'll return it now. We'll be back with our panel in a little while. Let's go back to Atlanta and Judy.
All right, Larry, what a night, what an election, what a count. We're going to look at 2 of the 4 states that we are still not able to call and look very closely at the raw vote. Right now, the state of Wisconsin, the Badger State, Al Gore has 48%. Again, this is 64% of the precincts reporting Al Gore with 48%, George W. Bush with 47%. You can see why this election is so close. In the state, and continuing in the state of Wisconsin, we're going to look at the Nader vote. Ralph Nader is pulling 4%, while there is less than a 1 percentage point difference between George Bush and Al Gore.
Ralph Nader has 64,000 votes. That would probably give the state to him. Now let's go to Oregon.
Oregon, again, 49%, half the precincts reporting less than 1%, about 1% of the votes separating Al Gore and George Bush. But now let's look at the Nader vote and the Buchanan vote and the vote for John Hagelin, who is the Natural Law Party. nominee in Oregon. We will check on those numbers. We're not able to bring them to you right now. We have to pull up an entirely separate graphic there, if you will. Our apologies. We'll try to do that when we come back. We're going to take a break and look even deeper into these numbers. We'll be back.
The decision has already been made. The votes have been cast. They just have to be tabulated.
Tom, it's 12:25 in the morning.
It is a close election, and we're down to 4 states. We don't know the results of the outcome in those states. Let's look at what the states are. In Oregon, with 49%, almost half the precincts reporting, there is a 2 percentage point separation. 48% for George Bush, W. Bush, 46% for Al Gore. And now let's look at what Ralph Nader is drawing. 4%, 32,000 votes.
Way more than the margin.
Way more than the margin, if you assume that most of the Nader votes would come from Al Gore, which is an assumption that some people will make. Others may disagree.
Yes.
In the state of Iowa at this hour, with 84% of the precincts reporting, Al Gore is ahead by 1 percentage point, 562,000 votes to 551,000 for George W. Bush. And look, Ralph Nader, 2%.
In other words, if you assume most of those votes come from Gore, as our exit polls are showing, Gore's only up by 11,000. You could probably add another 6,000 to 10,000 votes to his lead safely.
Right. That's right.
And in the state of Florida, the one we've been looking at all night long, look at this, 86% of the precincts reporting. At this moment, George Bush 50% to Al Gore's 48,000, 2.4 million to 2.3 million. And now let's look at the other names on the ballot. Ralph Nader, 2%, drawing 78,000 votes.
Gore is losing by 103,000 votes. Nader's drawing 78,000. You figure without Nader, it would be even closer than it is now.
But the only state where we can calculate that Nader is clearly tilting the state marginally to George W. Bush is Oregon.
Pat Neal is in Washington at Nader's campaign location. Pat?
Well, as you were talking about, Oregon is the key here. In Oregon, it appears now that Nader has about 4% of the vote, according to some of these exit polls. Now, Nader is particularly strong. He's just come to the podium here talking about the strength of this growing Green Party, to talk about how people needed to sit up and take notice of this Green Party. Now, people in Oregon understand this. He is particularly strong in the areas of Portland, Eugene, Salem, the Willamette Valley, all the way down to Ashland near the California border. There are issues out there that have gone on for some time that Nader has been involved in, environmental issues, the idea of breaching those dams to save the salmon. Also, the fact that one thing we need to point out, that Nader polled 4% in 1996 in Oregon without ever campaigning there. So that is a key factor there. Also, we've looked at Washington State, what he's done there. Also, Florida, as you mentioned, 2% of the vote in Florida. Now, Nader was just in Florida on Saturday night, rallying people, getting them excited, and getting people to go out and vote for him. He has been here, he's come back in, as we mentioned now, and telling people that, as we said, that this Green Party is something to be reckoned with. Bernie?
Okay, Pat Neal, I'm wondering, has Ralph Nader privately or any of his people in the campaign had anything to say other than what Nader has claimed, that he's not being a spoiler, he's not raining on Al Gore's parade, he won't cost him the election?
Well, he has said all along throughout this campaign, and they are saying privately as well as publicly, that Al Gore, if Al Gore loses this campaign, it was because of Al Gore. It was not because of Ralph Nader. He has said this repeatedly. He has said this defiantly down to today, that he is pulling votes because of his popularity, and it does not have anything to do with Al Gore. Actually, the Nader people have said that they expect and they predict 40% of the vote for Nader would have been people who never would have gone to the polls at all. Bernie?
Okay, thank you, Pat Neal, at Ralph Nader's headquarters in Washington. Judy?
All right, Ralph Nader, I'm looking at a quote from him when he singled out the Democratic Party, the campaigning he's done throughout this year. He called it a hollow party that tells labor unions, minority groups, and its progressive members, you've got nowhere to go because we're not as bad as the Republican Party. All right, we're going to go back to Washington now to our own Larry King. Larry.